Hello and welcome to our latest conversation. My name's Charlie Connor. I'm the Sales Director at Experian for Identity, Fraud and Financial Crime. And today's conversation is going to centre around our latest Fraud and Financial Crime report. Those will be familiar with the survey. You'll have noted a slight difference there because we're now talking about fraud and financial crime because increasingly we're seeing a convergence of those two functions. Chris Grant, you've read the Fraud Financial Crime report. We've seen lots of problems identified in there, decreasing confidence, the impact of Gen AI. What's all that about then?
So with the emergence of Gen AI, deepfake technology, and voice cloning now as well, I think it's absolutely understandable that in the last 12 months we've seen a significant drop, 15% drop, percentage point drop on the previous year in our customers and the businesses that we surveyed, their confidence in their ability to identify customers online. And I think increasingly AI and the adoption of AI by our customers, by businesses is the only real way to tackle the emerging threats that are coming through.
So when I speak to customers regularly, they almost have too much choice. They know some of the challenges out there, but it strikes me that they need intelligence in order to be able to make some of those bigger decisions. Chris, what are you seeing from an analytics perspective?
Fundamentally, Charlie, there's obviously, as you said, there's a lot of stuff in the market to try and combat this. Everyone's got their latest technology that's going to stop an AI threat, and they're all going about it in a different way. And they're generally point solutions. So we can solve this particular niche problem, and you end up with this patchwork of solutions that every organization's trying to piece together. It's just adding complexity. Which solutions do you want, in which combination, and how do you combine them together to give you that simplified, holistic view of the risk of the application? So, from our side, the machine learning and AI is coming in at that point and saying, how do we combine those together in the best way to make that decision, essentially, and do it effectively?
From a prevention perspective, coupling those all together and having the right workflow, the right orchestration, what about from a money laundering perspective?
From a money laundering perspective, it's the same. I think historically we've had fraud teams and anti-money laundering teams working separately. You'll have heard last year the new portmanteau, FRAML, stands for Fraud and AML, and really focuses on actually how can the fraud intelligence teams start sharing those critical insights with the money laundering teams, the anti-money laundering teams, to really create context and make sure they're focusing on that. And I think back to what you said, Chris, I think with all of this information together and these capabilities coming together, we need to have a think about those two things, smart orchestration, and actually how can we yet leverage AI to make sure that the decision-making process across those the disparate data points and technologies is taking everything into consideration.
So we've talked about technology. Technology continues to evolve. What about from a regulatory perspective? What's changing in the marketplace that might be having an impact here?
I mean, in the last 12 months, the real focus has been around ECTA, the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. It's recently passed, and that's looking at how economic crime data sharing can help encourage the industry to share concerns. So previously, it was very difficult for the AML regulated sector to share information with one another. And what ECTA is now encouraging in market is if you exit a customer based on a suspicion that they are a money launderer, you now have the opportunity to tell other banks about that concern and allow them the opportunity to take necessary action.
Okay, so the principle of data sharing, that feels a little way off at the moment, but what about the PSR and the new reimbursement model?
So the PSR regime is coming in October 2024. And what's curious here is under the contingent reimbursement scheme, the banks who are sending the payments and receiving payments are going to have to share those losses 50-50. That certainly creates impetus to make sure that APP fraud, which we know right now through the report, is the most common type of fraud. That drives the right motivations to make sure fraudsters who are capitalising on their victims are detected.
Yeah, and so we often, organisations know how to look for a fraudster, but it's a slightly different challenge when looking for a money mule. So what do we know about the profile of a money mule, Chris?
So we've done some analysis that profiles them. What we found is they are generally young individuals. 70% of them are under 40. They live in large metropolitan areas, particularly London, Birmingham, Manchester. They've got poor credit scores, and they fall in the bottom 3 income deciles of the UK population. So that's people earning less than 22,000. That's a picture of people who are not, being greedy, wanting more, They are essentially vulnerable individuals with poor financial state, essentially, or low income, and they're essentially they're just needing more money. There is a kind of a vulnerable state they're looking, easy to exploit, essentially.
And that becomes important because already you're looking at strategies to identify good customers, the vulnerable, money mills, fraudsters. So you've got to have a breadth of capability in order just to identify those different groups of individuals.
Indeed. I guess the other thing is the fraudsters know this too, right? Yeah. So they're going to target those people for social engineering and scams. And I guess gone are the days where you can spot an email from a Nigerian prince. It's now a video from a celebrity, live chat even.
So it's not easy. So Grant, what are your recommendations, takeaways on this?
I think the answer is there is no one answer. There's no single answer, no silver bullet. I think the only answer is to look at actually all of the capabilities that exist today in the market and think carefully about how you orchestrate those, you combine them, and actually think about how you can leverage AI to make sure the decisions that you're making are absolutely optimal and as good as they can be.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us in our conversation today. If you'd like to find out more, then please take a look at the link below.